So we're doing postcard talks. A series of postcards, promotional postcards. You guys hopefully have one. If you don't have one, raise your hand and we will get you one. Somebody? Anybody? Jesus? Dave? We have a series of 8 postcards. I think we're on week number 5 at this point, maybe week number 4 in the postcard talks. We're introducing them one at a time. These are basically simple sayings, simple ideas about our New Thought practice. Some of them are a little tongue-in-cheek, like we did I Love Steven Singer. It's kind of fun. The idea is, first of all, to get the word out about New Thought in Philadelphia, but also to remind us what we're all about here. So this one is practical prayer, real results. We didn't invent prayer. Prayer has actually been around for a long time. In fact, all the words that are on this postcard have been around for a long time. We put them in a slightly different order than other people do. Prayer is very common. Lots of people do prayer. All the religions and spiritual practices include prayer in one form or another. And in a lot of ways, in my opinion, prayer is highly misunderstood. Deeply, wonderfully, completely misunderstood in some cases. Prayer, and I hope I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, prayer does not make you any more spiritual. Praying does not make you any more spiritual. And the reason for that is that you are a 100% spiritual being right now. You always have been. You always will be. You cannot be any more spiritual than you are because you are 100% spiritual. Now, getting involved in spiritual practices, including prayer, helps us sometimes with a reminder of how spiritual we are, because a lot of times it's easy to forget. Practical Prayer for Real Results, which is also the title of a book that I wrote because I'm a real fan and enthusiast on this topic. There's a lot that's packed into there. So let's take the words one at a time. We're going to do the little etymology, which is the study of words, as opposed to entomology, which is the study of insects, or Entenmann's, which is a cake. Cake. Ooh, get cake. So all the spiritual practices, all the religions have talked about prayer. And in fact, one of the best known parts of Scripture in the New Testament is in Matthew 6:9. And it starts, after this manner, therefore pray. Actually, therefore pray ye, because it's the King James Version and there's a ye there. And I looked for the translation in the New American Bible. It says, this is how you are to pray. And it's in the red letter Bible, that's one of the ones that's in red letters. That's one of the things that Jesus said. So when Jesus said, this is how you are to pray, you'd figure that's probably some pretty good instructions. And as I mentioned, this is one of the most well-known passages in the New Testament. Now, when I was growing up, I was in a Protestant church, and we talked about prayer, and then every once in a while, God bless you. I love doing that, and I mean it. We can go into more detail later. That's what practitioner work is for. They kept on talking about prayer, and then the person up on the platform, somebody would do some long, drawn-out, mumbling prayer kind of thing. But whenever we were doing a prayer, it was, now I lay me down to sleep, which was always just weird for me. It's like, really? I'm 6 and we're praying about death? What's up with that? And the other one is the Our Father. And that was, just we repeated that all the time. It turns out that in Matthew 6:9, and by the way, it's also in Luke, did the same thing, a slightly different telling of the same story. But also, the part that's famous, we start in the middle of the verse. How often do people start quoting a chapter and verse in the middle of a verse and skip the first part?
A lot.
Most of them start at the beginning. This one, not so much. After this manner, therefore, pray ye. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. That's where the Lord Prayer is. That's where the Our Father came from. So is Jesus saying, this is the prayer you need to say all the time? If you read the part in Luke, it would seem like you need to say this prayer all the time. Maybe it's a little bit ambiguous. Maybe we should just repeat this prayer. Well, if you look back a little further, and you read leading into that passage. He says, do not pray by vain repetition. Pray by going within, speaking to the Father within, who knows what you need before you ask. And then pray like this. What Jesus was talking about there was a practical prayer. And in a practical prayer, that's the second word, practical, because a lot of times you don't hear practical and prayer put together. A practical prayer is about the result. The reason that we want to do a prayer is not so that we can be more spiritual. Remember the part that we already talked about, you're already as spiritual as you're going to be. The reason that we're going to do a prayer is to awaken our awareness of how spiritual we are and create a new experience in our life. Now, it might be a new experience for us, might be a new experience for somebody else, might be a new way that pieces are fitting together, might be a way that Carousel Hyundai can finally get rid of that GT. Except it's good news for Dave. It's taking the pieces that are already there and fitting them together in a way that brings more good, more joy, more love, more prosperity, more health and vitality into the wholeness that's God's creation. In Judaism, there are 613 mitzvahs, or mitzvot as they call them. Those are the laws. Jewish law is based on 613 laws. Seems like a lot. And it's studying for the exam is what a bar mitzvah is about. It's learning the laws so that as somebody goes from their childhood to their adulthood, they know the laws that they are to live by. Because in spiritual law, as in the law of the land, ignorance of the law is no excuse. The law is working all the time. You cannot tell gravity, oh, I didn't know about gravity, so when I stepped off of that, whatever it was, it shouldn't have pulled me down to the bottom of the cliff, or whatever it happens to be. No, it's going to work anyway. The law is working. So the idea is to learn the laws and understand how the laws are going to work. Now, Judaism also introduced us to the 10 Commandments. And the first 9 of the mitzvahs are all about God. God is God, God is it, God is the one. You need to pay attention to God, you need to respect God, you need to turn your attention and your prayers and your devotion to God. Took 9 of them. The first commandment is about the same thing. Pray to no other God but God. In Islam, that's the first surah. There is no God but God. There's no God but Allah. So it's to turn our attention to that God presence, because that's the spiritual part of praying. It's to be aware that we are part of this spiritual universe where we can speak a word with that same creative power that the infinite speaks with. So back to the results part. Usually people think of results as being really left-brained. You know, we're going to manage, organize things and get them to come out the way that we want to. And doing something that is a completely creative process and doesn't seem connected to the end result, like a prayer, how would that necessarily connect through to be a result? Well, the way that it works is the prayer is intended to create a new idea, a new creative energy in the universe. And that idea can then coalesce into a different experience. Because there's one truth. There's one infinite truth. It's what the laws are all talking about. Now, I can't explain what that infinite truth is. I mean, I can kind of describe that it is there, and there are times when I'm sitting and I'm in meditation and I feel really connected to it. And sometimes it's in communication with other people. I can feel connected to that infinite truth. But the fact of the matter is, I am always having my own personal experience of it. So I have the truth and then I have my experience. So there's my truth. And then there's this greater truth. And what I can shift is my awareness of the truth, my awareness of how I interact with that infinite power. And that can change my experience. That's where the results come from. We'll leave real for a little bit. So we've got practical prayer and we've got results. Well, this is seeming like it's A, really complicated, and B, really simple. So I hear you say, Reverend Bill, what are you talking about? So instead of talking about prayer and talking about the infinite and all the rest of that, I'm going to talk about a restaurant, a diner, a really great diner where you get one of those, the menus just goes on and on forever. If you think of the universe like it's a really fancy diner, and you're sitting in the dining room, and you're having your life, you're having your experience, you're together with whatever group you happen to be there with, the server comes over and says, "What would you like?" And you can order something that's on the menu, or you can come up with an idea of something that's not on the menu and see if they can do that. And in this infinite diner, the server always says, "Yes." "Can you make one of these for me?" "Yes." Because the server doesn't care. The server's job is to listen to what it is that you would like to experience and say yes, and then what? Go back to the kitchen and tell this infinite chef, "We need one of these." We might be able to whip it up really quickly. If you want an infinite souffle, it's going to take another 20 minutes. So there might be some time attached to the process. Might need to wait for the tomatoes to come into season. But as soon as you put in the order, it is already on the way. When we talk about a practical prayer for a real result, we're talking about using that process on an infinite level. We're standing in this, or sitting comfortably, opulently, in this wonderfully appointed dining room, and the infinite is saying, "What would you like?" Our friend Robert D. McDonald has 4 questions. We've been over them before. I'm going to go over them again because they're really, really important. The first question is, are you happy with the experience of life that you're having now? It's a yes or no question. Are you happy with the way things are going? Because if the answer is yes, then we're done. Check, please. And if the answer is no, then the next question is, okay, so you're not happy with the experience of life that you're having now. What do you want to have instead? That's the server standing in front of you saying, "May I have your order? What can I bring you? What would you like?" And you get to choose. You always get to choose. You're always in the process of choosing. But you need to be clear about the order. If you tell your server, "I'd like something that has maybe eggs," then the server is going to go back into the kitchen, and that puts, then there's the communication. The server can say, "I know a thing with eggs, let's make that." Or the server can just go back and repeat exactly what you said, "Something with maybe eggs." And the infant is going to go, "What do I want to prepare? What could possibly fit this description that would be okay?" And what comes back out will indeed have maybe eggs in it, and hopefully you'll like it, but maybe it won't. Maybe you need it to be a little bit more specific about what it is that you actually want it to be experiencing. You need to be clear. You need to be specific about the experience that you want to have. Otherwise, you're going to get what you're going to get. And we can be very clear and intentional about what it is we want to experience. We can't necessarily say how we want it to show up. If I want to experience love in my life, that's wonderful. I can pray for love in my life. If I pray for that particular person to leave her husband so that I can love her, the universe might go, "That's really none of your business." She's doing her own thing, he's doing his own thing. The pieces aren't necessarily going to fit together that way. So you may have to wait. You may wind up having to wait a long time. What we're praying for, what we're setting our intention for, what we are ordering is that feeling, that experience that we want to be having. And we need to be specific about how we want it to feel, but not necessarily specific about how those pieces are going to fit together. So after we know what the answer to that second question is, what do I want to have instead? Need to be even more specific. Once I have it, how will I know that I have it? Because if what I'm asking for is a 3-egg omelet, then when it shows up, I'll say, "Here's my 3-egg omelet." And if I'm saying, "I don't feel full and satisfied," well, you might already be feeling full and satisfied, in which case nothing's going to happen because you're not specific about the change that's going to happen in your experience so that you know you've got it. In the scientific world, they call that making it evaluatable, putting some metrics on it. How will I know that I have it once I have it? And then the fourth question is, what's keeping me from having it now? And in the restaurant metaphor, that's like thinking about going into the diner but not going into the diner, or sitting down but not letting the server come over and take the order. Or when the server says, "What would you like?" you go, "Can I have a few more minutes?" Because the universe and the server and the entire system is going to be very happy to do whatever it is that you are actually intending, what you are actually putting your word to. And if you're saying, yeah, maybe soon, like, whatever, then what you're going to be experiencing is, like, yeah, maybe soon, whatever. And you better be happy with that, because that's what you set your intention for. By the way, you can pray for another person if you want to. In the same way that in that diner, you could order for somebody else. You go to the diner, they don't know what they want. You say, she'll have a steak. She'll have a bacon cheeseburger. But you better be really careful, because if the person who you're ordering for is gluten intolerant or lactose intolerant or a vegetarian, I would not get any points if I ordered for my wife a bacon cheeseburger. The beef is bad enough, but she thinks that pigs are adorable. No bacon. That would not be a favor for her. So I need to be really clear. If I'm taking that authority to order for somebody else, I need to know what it is that they want. The same thing works in prayer. You can pray for somebody else, but you need to know what it is that they want. You can always pray for them to have an enjoyable meal. You can always pray for somebody else to be experiencing love and joy and happiness and prosperity. You can't necessarily say exactly what it's going to look like. Love unfolding, highest and best. Those are the things that we can pray for somebody else without them knowing about it. But if we want to be specific about what we're going to pray for somebody else, we need to say so. The actual challenging word in here is real, because we talk about the universe being this one single infinite power and presence, this limitless energy that shares itself in all of these different ways, and every person on the planet, all 7+ billion of us, is that same infinite energy showing up in a different way. Well, it doesn't seem that way from inside of my skin. I seem to be over here and everything else seems to be out there. So there's this wonderful illusion that we're separate. And real is when you understand that there is no reality. Reality is that infinite love, and it's just the way that it's showing up for us. We can get into wonderful discussions. However, for our purposes today, a real result is one that we actually are experiencing in our lives. A practical prayer for real result is a way of changing your consciousness, changing your intentionality to bring a new experience into your life. So I'm going to close with a practical prayer for real results. I invite you to close your eyes. This will be very brief. Or you can go into soft focus so that you can go within, so we can turn away from that universe around us to that all the stuff that's going on, all the distractions, and open our awareness even just a little more to that divine love, that infinite God presence that is everything, that is everywhere, that is everyone. Whatever that power is that in the beginning said, "Let there be light," is continuing to evolve, bringing that light into form in more and more different ways. Everything is that infinite light. Everything is that divine God love, including me, including each one of us. So I know that as that light shines through everything that we are and everything that we do, more love, more joy, more harmony, more peace, more good comes into our lives, into our relationships, into our work, into our financial affairs, into our experience of physical health, into our spiritual practices. That light, that love continues to unfold and blossom even more greatly for each one of us. And I'm grateful for it. And with gratitude for this good, I speak this word of intention into the same law that has always said yes. And it once again responds with a big, loud, and loving yes. Yes. So it is. Thank you.